Europe Now. Special State of the European Union with Dirk van den Boom and Nana Walzer. A wonderful good morning to all of you out there from me, myself, and Dirk, of course. Welcome to our special edition, a commented version of the live broadcast of the SOT EU. This is an annual address tackling the current state of the European Union by EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. In a few minutes, she will address the European Parliament in Strasbourg, but actually she means to talk to all of us Europeans. Dirk, what would you say? Why would you say this speech is important for all of us European citizens? Does it have any impact on our everyday lives?
Well, it has in a way an impact because it gives a direction in where European policies might go in the middle term and how things in the past went or did not went very well. We should not forget that this is the last speech of the current legislative period. So we don't know if she will return as a president of the EU Commission, but now is her time to wrap up and see what have I achieved and what not, and that will be very interesting.
So what to expect from the upcoming, let's say, roughly 90 minutes? President von der Leyen will deliver a review, meaning an overview of what has been achieved in the last year in European politics. Furthermore, she will take stock on the currently most central and most burning issues, and she will point out the priorities of the future and draw her conclusions for EU politics. Those big challenges for Europe will for sure include Russia's war on Ukraine, the climate change, and the ongoing energy crisis. Other major topics will be concerning economy, innovation, or digital transformation, but also social fairness and security policy, to name just a few of the upcoming highlights, or I'd better say heavyweights that await us. Also, this year's speech, as you just said, Dirk, might be her last one because with the upcoming elections next year in June, the elections to the European Parliament, the political landscape might change completely. We cannot emphasize enough at that point how important it is for all of us to go to vote so that we can also have a say in the change what's coming up for European politics. Dirk, what impact do you think the European election in June 24 will have on the future of Europe? And what difference does it make whether we, the people, participate by making a simple cross somewhere on the voting paper?
Well, there are some experts who expect that we will have a more right-wing parliament, that a more conservative outlook on European policy will prevail, which will have a direct impact on all the legislative activities and the things the European Parliament has to agree or disagree with. So I think that if we want to have a progressive European Parliament, if we want to have progress in the European unification process, in the integration process, we all should look very carefully in the programs of the parties running and the candidates running to make the right choice. Because I am afraid that if we have a really right-wing European Parliament, there will be a lot of paralysis in the European developments in the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's really something to keep in mind. Also to keep in mind is that you get an outlook of what you can expect from the two of us. Once we started with the live comment, Dick and me, we will read not only what you write in the chat, we will be interfering and commenting also what is being said. We will, of course, address your questions from the chat and your comments, and you can write to us in English and German. We will do our best to translate accordingly. And at this point, you might ask, who are we, the two of us who dare to comment the Commission President herself? Let me introduce Dr. Dirk van den Boom in the shortest possible version. Dirk, you're an adored political science professor, very, very well known by now as an expert on European politics here on the Wildmics channel of Twitch, and you're a celebrated science fiction author. Myself, I come from communication science and somehow find myself engaging in the European dialogue between politics and civil society for many years now. And before we start, and I think we are looking like it would be starting in a few moments, I'd also like to say thanks because this stream is happening in cooperation with the representation of the European Commission in Austria, with Europe Direct, and with the Union of European Youth Austria. And well, Dirk, what's your plan for the next 1.5 hours or so? Do you have any plans?
Oh, yes, I have a plan. I have to listen very carefully. And as I didn't take enough coffee this morning, I have to be I've expressed the hope that the president's speech will be very lively and engaging, because otherwise I will get very tired.
You will get very tired. Well, we don't want that to happen. Is there anything that you expect from the address to the European Parliament? Do you have any hopes, wishes, fears, or even
Well, she
already
started.
profound critical thoughts?
Yeah, no. She started her tenure with a very programmatic speech on climate change. That was her agenda setting at the beginning, and then unfortunately history happened, COVID pandemic, and then Ukraine war, and she had to react more in her speeches to things that history put on her table. I'm very interested if she will go back to how she started and wrap things up, go full circle, and say, okay, I started with this agenda on climate change, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that that's where I started with, and we have to see where we are and what still needs to be done. Or if she again will be forced to go more about to talk about more current issues. So I would hope very much that she will remember her entry into the office, her agenda she was trying to set, and come back to that in a good part of the speech. I would love that.
It would really be nice to have a review or a recap of the last legislative period. It started in 2019, will, as I said, end next year with the elections to the European Parliament. The political setting was aiming for a greener, more digital and fairer EU before all the other crises came on top of that. The realization of those goals actually meant, for example, the ambitioned goal of climate neutrality of the continent in 2050. And there are many political fields, actually 6 political fields, while that she had to tackle while managing one crisis after the others. And these 6 fields, they might be interesting, and I guess she will come back to them. They are the European Green Deal, a just economy, a digitally fit Europe, the European defense, a stronger Europe in the world, and a strong democratic condition of Europe. Well, it seems like she would be starting in a few seconds, so let's get
She's
excited.
still shaking hands.
She's
Many people in the parliament,
important
many
things
people in the
first.
parliament who want to have a photo op. I mean, everyone, all the photograph there. This is a very important kind of historic moment, of course, in the history of the European Union every year, especially now as the legislative period comes to an end. So this is the opportunity, maybe for the last time, we don't know yet, to shake hands with her, to show him or herself with her, and to get this documented for past time. So I think we will have to wait for another few minutes, because as I see it, not everyone is seated. Actually, the many seats are still empty. So I guess that some of the members are still outside in the lobby, mingling around, maybe having a last cup of coffee before they are ready to enter. And she is sitting there in the front row. I think when the speech starts, she will probably move to the front, to where the speaker's stand is. So I guess we still have some few minutes before the room is full.
All right. To give us a little bit of time to also explain what we are doing with our live comment of the SOTU, we also aim to provide some background information and some context to you. This is especially why Dirk is here with me today. And I'm very happy that you're here. Most important, anyway, to us is also the experience that we all are somehow being part of the European space. And I think it's going to start.
Good morning. I am very pleased this morning to welcome the President of the European Commission. Can I please ask you to take your seats for this important occasion? I am very pleased to welcome the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, to our European Parliament for the annual State of the European Union address. Over the last years, we have overcome a financial crisis, a pandemic. We have gone through Brexit and found new ways forward. We have stood up and stood firm against Russia's illegal and brutal invasion of Ukraine. We are addressing the climate emergency. We have disengaged from toxic Russian energy and we have set the foundation for years to come. The European Union today is stronger and more united than ever before. The world is changing and Europe must adapt and change with it too. We must keep striving to make our Europe a place of equality, of opportunity, of access, of prosperity, where everyone can reach their potential. We must keep reforming. So we have come a long way, but even so, too many people across our union are still struggling. Too many women still face unfair barriers. Too many of our young people still face an uncertain future. We need to keep our people's concerns at the center of all our actions. And to underline how we will do that, it is truly my pleasure to introduce the President of the European Commission to deliver her 2023 State of the European Union address, which for the first time, I am extremely proud to say, will be interpreted in international sign language. Dear Ursula, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam President, ministers, honorable members. In just under 300 days, Europeans will take to the polls in our unique and remarkable democracy. As with any election, it will be the time for people to reflect on the state of our union and the work done by those that represent them. But it will also be a time to decide on what kind of future and what kind of Europe they want. Among them will be millions of first-time voters. The youngest of them were born in 2008, the economic and financial crisis. As they stand in that polling booth, they will think about what matters to them. They will think about the war that rages at our borders, or the impact of destructive climate change, about how artificial intelligence will influence their lives, or their chances of getting a house or job in the years ahead. Our union today reflects the vision of those who dreamt of a better future after World War II. A future in which a union of nations, democracies, and people work together to share peace and prosperity. They believed that Europe was the answer to the call of history.
Maybe if I can stop there for a short comment. I find it very interesting that she's referring right from start to the issue of this unique and remarkable democracy and coming up with the elections, which are coming soon, and the young people they're voting for the first time. And of course, this is very nice that she says that, but we maybe have to remind that the house she's standing there, the European Parliament, is still not capable of making its own laws by itself from the floor there. The European Parliament can say yes and no to things put forward to them by other institutions of the European Union, but it is not capable of saying, okay, we're doing our own legislative procedure now, and you do whatever we say. And secondly, the Commission is still not elected in a firm sense, even by the Parliament. They can say yes or no, but it is picked by the national governments, more or less. So yes, it is a unique democracy, but it is probably not a very remarkable one yet.
And when I speak to the new generation of young people today, I see that same vision for a better future, that same burning desire to build something better, that same belief that in a world of uncertainty, Europe once again must answer the call of history. And that is what we have to do together. This starts with earning the trust of Europeans to deal with their aspirations and anxieties. And in the next 300 days, we must finish the job that they entrusted us with. I want to thank this House for its leading role in delivering on the most ambitious transformations this union has ever embarked on.
I would like to stop here for a moment and emphasize from my side as a communication scientist that she's talking about trust. And trust is actually the antidote to fear and to aggression. So it's de-stressing. She's also speaking especially slow this time. So this was a bit different the last time. And I think she's trying to really do the right thing here on the communication side to calm people down. Because the most dangerous thing in times of crisis and ongoing crisis and more crisis is that people shut down due to stress and they go into fight, flight, or a total freeze mode, ignorance mode, and then they either not go for voting, for example, they don't engage in democracy, or they search for the strong leaders that provide simple solutions. And as we know, they don't exist in complex situations. So that's from my side my first comment.
When I thought of you in 2019 with my program for green, a digital and geopolitical Europe, I know that some had doubts. And that was before the world turned upside down with a global pandemic and a brutal war on European soil. But look at where Europe is today. We've seen the birth of a geopolitical union, supporting Ukraine, standing up to Russia's aggression, responding to an assertive China, investing in partnerships. We now have a European Green Deal as a centerpiece of our economy and unmatched in ambition. We have set the path for digital transition to become global pioneers in online rights. We have the historic Next Generation EU, combining 800 billion euros of investment and reform and creating decent jobs for today and tomorrow. We have set the building blocks for a health union, helping to vaccinate an entire continent and large parts of the world. We've started making ourselves more independent in critical sectors like energy, chips, and raw materials. I would also like to thank you for the groundbreaking and pioneering work we did on gender equity. As a woman, this means a lot to me. We've concluded files that many thought would be blocked forever, like the Women on Boards Directive and the historic accession of the EU to the Istanbul Convention. With the Directive on Pay Transparency, we have cast into law the basic principle that equal work deserves equal pay. There is not a single argument why, for the same type of work, a woman should be paid less than a man. But our work is far from over, and we must continue pushing for progress together. I know this House supports our proposal on combating violence against women. And here too, I would like that we cast into law another basic principle. No means no. There can be no true equality without freedom from violence.
So maybe one small comment on this. I think this is a very strong, and the fact that here the members were clapping is that this is one of the first major points she's making in this speech after the introductory remarks. And I agree with her that there has been progress in the legislative area with different areas with equality in regard to equality, gender equality. But what is, of course, very important is that laws are one thing, the society and how the society is watching these kind of issues is a different one. And I fear that we should not overestimate the influence a body like the European Union can have. The culture of inequality, the culture of discrimination against women, but this idea that they are inferior, they can earn less and things, this is very much ingrained still in very many people all over the European Union. And you can make many laws, And to implement and use these laws is one thing, but to change the attitude, to generally change the attitude, to see, okay, this is a thing of the past. We have to really have progress in this area. This is a very long step. And there has been a lot of criticism in regard to the European Union that this is too late and too slow. But please, the European Union itself as a body and the Commission and the Parliament are not sufficient to change this. They can set a framework, but the rest has to be done by ourselves. So let's see what she has to say about that.
Social
Cultural
changes come
changes,
with
yes,
education, come with all of us.
correct,
in the
correct.
End, yes.
It's you cannot change this behavior just with a law. That it's not possible.
But it's
there has to be
really
the
important
background.
step.
It is important, but it's not enough. Yes.
And thanks to this Parliament, to Member States and to my team of commissioners, we have delivered over 90% of the political guidelines I presented in 2019. Together, we have shown that when Europe is bold and united, it gets things done. And our work is far from over, so let's stand together, let's deliver today, and prepare for tomorrow. Honourable members, 4 years ago, the European Green Deal was our answer to the call of history. And this summer, the hottest ever on record in Europe, was a stark reminder of that. Greece and Spain were struck by ravaging wildfires and were hit again only a few weeks later by devastating floods. And we saw the chaos and carnage of extreme weather from Slovenia to Bulgaria and right across our union. This is the reality of a boiling planet.
At that point, I would like to comment the comment in the chat. When it is united, is there in question marks or in brackets, but it isn't. I think the question of being united is actually a very democratic one. What she's trying to do with her speech so far is to point out that the crisis that we face one after the other is giving us an opportunity to stand united. But it needs, of course, the discussion process and the discourse and the process of finding common goals. And this is what needs to happen, not only on the political field, but also in the civil society field. So it can only be united. Europe can only be united when we face together what is in front of us.
Well, she is, of course, looking positively into what she has done. She has to. It's her last speech in the current period, and she cannot say, okay, I didn't do anything, it didn't work. But I think she is, of course, painting things a little bit more rosy than they are. On the other hand, the European Union, despite the fact that there are some countries like Hungary and others who are dissenting in some areas, has achieved a number of the steps. And I think that we can always look for the 100%. She herself mentioned 90%. I would say maybe more realistically 60 to 70%. You will never get all. But I think that in some areas, in fact, she's right. Some important steps have been made. Other areas are lacking. And sometimes in the implementation, we are lacking as well, because not everyone is pulling as he should. But I would not paint it negatively. We are not united. There's all disarray. I would also not put it too rosy. We are all already united. We are not. We are somewhere in the middle ground, I think.
It's a constant process. And yes, if we look at Poland and Hungary, to come back to the chat again, there are some examples. What happens if democracy and democratic principles are not strong enough and if people vote for authoritarian leaders? So
Yes.
let's go on and come back to Ursula von der Leyen.
The European Green Deal was born out of this necessity to protect our planet. But it was also designed as an opportunity to preserve our future prosperity. We started this mandate by setting long-term perspective with the climate law and the 2050 goals. We shifted the climate agenda to being an economic one, and this has given clear sense of direction for investment and innovation. And we have already seen this growth strategy delivering in the short term. Europe's industry is showing every single day that it is ready to power this transition. proving that modernization and decarbonization can go hand in hand.
I'd like to ask you here at that point, Dirk, the Green Deal, the many new laws, initiatives, and the plan to make EU's industry climate neutral. Let me ask very critically, will Europe's economy survive the climate change measures? Because there is a lot of having to be paid, having to change in the industry, in the economy.
Yes, but there's also a lot of money to be made. And I think you just mentioned it. We have to have an economic approach to climate change policies as well. And climate change has to be addressed, and we can do it very strict, and we can do it by imposing a lot of things, or we can do it together with economy and together with the industry and see, okay, how can you still make money in this environment, and what is the way open? Where can we go, and where can we help you to do that, to fulfill both goals, that we have a healthy economy and at the same time we protect our climate? I think that's the direction she's going to. I'm not always sure if the Green Deal is fulfilling all these promises. I mean, there are many, many different regulations and provisions which are somehow critically scrutinized. But the basic idea that you have to go with it is very important, because every single citizen, every one of us is paying for the climate change, if we do it, or if we do anything against it, or if we have to shoulder the consequences. And we can only do that if we earn our own money, and if we are able to do that, if we have the capacity and the resources to have our own crisis management. And for that, we need a functioning economy. So we cannot divide these things. I think the Green Deal is the first step. I think a little bit more has to be done on that, but it is the first step. At least we should give her that.
Okay, let's take a look what the economy of the future might expect.
In the last 5 years, the number of clean steel factories in the European Union has grown from 0 to 38. We're now attracting more investment in clean hydrogen than the United States and China together. And tomorrow I will be in Denmark with Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen to see that innovation firsthand. We will mark the launch of the first container ship powered by clean methanol made with solar energy. This is the strength of Europe's response to climate change. The European Green Deal provides the necessary frame, incentives, and investment, but it is the people, the innovators, the inventors, the engineers who develop the solutions. And this is why, honorable members, as we enter the next phase of the European Green Deal, one thing will never change. We will keep supporting European industry throughout this transition. They can rely on that. We started with a package of measures from the Net Zero Industry Act to the Critical Raw Materials Act. With our industry strategy, we're looking at the risks and needs of each ecosystem in this transition, and we need to finish this work. And with this, we need to develop an approach for each industrial ecosystem. Therefore, starting from this month, we will hold a series of clean transition dialogues with industry. The core aim will be to support every sector in building its business model for the decarbonization of industry, because we believe that this transition is essential for our future competitiveness in Europe. And this is just as much about the people and their jobs today. Our wind industry, for instance, is a European success story, but it is currently facing a unique mix of challenges. And this is why we will put forward a European wind power package, working closely with industry and member states. We will fast-track permitting even more. We will improve the auction systems across the European Union. We will focus on skills, access to finance, and stable supply chains. But this is broader than just one sector. From wind to steel, from batteries to electric vehicles, our ambition is crystal clear. The future of our clean tech industry has to be made in Europe. This is our task.
Dirk, let's talk about energy.
Yes.
You lack your coffee in the morning. Let's talk about energy. At least. Energy crisis. There was this program, Repower EU. In the end, a revision of the electricity market rules that ensured better prices for the customers was one outcome. And by now, less than 10% come from Russian gas. More electricity is being produced from wind and solar in 22. These numbers come from 22. Than from gas. So I think she was referring to the really important role that wind energy is playing here. In your estimation, are we out of the worst when it comes to the energy crisis?
I don't think so, because these are the official numbers. But just a few days ago, an article came out telling us how Russian gas is re-imported from India. So it is outside the quota we are officially taking from Russia. So there are many who are finding their ways to get that drug. I would say the cheap gas, which helps them. No, I think we are not out of the gas. I think we still have a very serious problem in the transmitting of energy in transnational power lines. There's a lot of investment now going on, but especially when it comes to solar and wind energy, we need the ability to transmit from high producing countries to who have less fortunate circumstances. And she mentioned batteries. I think the point of putting energy, which surplus energy, into hold and to need it in the night or in the winter is also a very important issue. So I think we have made some important step, forced out by outside events. I have to say, if Russia wouldn't have invaded Ukraine, the situation would look totally different. We would still very much like the cheap European gas. We should make no excuses about that. That's very clear. So in a way, it has helped. It is cynical, but it has helped. But there's still a lot to do.
Thank you. So let's see what she has to say.
Honourable members, this shows that when it comes to the European Green Deal, we stay the course, we stay ambitious, and we stick to our growth strategy. And we will always strive for fair and just transition. That means a fair outcome for future generations to live on a healthy planet, a fair journey for all those impacted with decent jobs, and a solemn promise to leave no one behind. Just think about manufacturing jobs and competitiveness, the topic we're discussing a lot in these days. Our industries and tech companies like competition. They know that global competition is good for business and that it creates and protects jobs here in Europe. But competition is only true as long as it is fair. Too often our companies are excluded from foreign markets or are victims of predatory practices. They are often undercut by competitors benefiting from huge state subsidies. We have not forgotten how China's unfair trade practices affected our solar industry. Many young businesses were pushed out by heavily subsidized Chinese competitors.
Maybe if I can add something, yes, of course, yes, there's room for concern when it comes to China's economic policies, and she mentioned solar energy. But the problem is that many countries, and I can speak for Germany, were very happy to let it go. There was a German solar industry. It is nearly non-existent anymore. So it is very easy just to put the blame on the Chinese somewhere far away, without looking at the mistakes we made in ourselves in our own industry policy, and there have been mistakes made.
Pioneer had to file for bankruptcies.
It's interesting, sorry, if I just might add,
Sure,
that she's
sure.
pointing out China also as kind of, well, I don't want to say enemy, but as kind of an opposition to
It
a
is.
fair economy, which is also leading to the question of what kind of system in the world in the end is the fairer one, democracy or
Yes.
autocracies, and whatever you want to call China, it's not
Right.
a democracy. And this reminds me a bit on US talk and US policy. What do you say
Yeah,
about
still,
that?
but it is shaping of geopolitical standpoints, and here we are clearly in the Western alliance, in the Western fold, and it is very clearly seen that the competition with China is the one which is shaping the future, and obviously she wants to, well, say it loud and clear so everyone will hear us also in Beijing.
Talents when searching for fortune abroad. This is why fairness in the global economy is so important, because it affects lives and livelihoods. Entire industries and communities depend on it. So we have to be clear-eyed about the risks we face. Take the electric vehicle sector. It is a crucial industry for the clean economy with a huge potential in Europe. But global markets are now flooded with cheaper Chinese electric cars. And their price is kept artificially low by huge state subsidies. This is distorting our market. And as we do not accept this distortion from the inside in our market, we do not accept this from the outside. So I can announce today that the Commission is launching an anti-subsidy investigation into electric vehicles coming from China.
Just to understand that correctly, Dirk, couldn't they be taxed? Like, I mean, foreign
Well,
products
that could be
taxed in that hate that.
that could be the consequence that it is also a WTO matter. And again, it is a matter of does China with its subsidies violate WTO rules? And if that is the case, then it can be an extra tax put on Chinese cars. That's possible. But we should also add, I mean, it is true China is heavily subsidizing its industries. It's not a really full. It's a state capitalist country, so it's not socialist, but it's also not like full free economy, and that's true. But we do the same. I mean, I bought an electric car, and the German government subsidized my purchase with 6,000 euros, and I'm not paying car tax. So subsidies are everywhere. We are doing the same thing. The question is, are these in relation the same? So, or is it unfair? And that is what this investigation is about.
Isn't there a general question behind all of that, that some or most of the products coming from China, from Asia, from somewhere else are simply cheaper because, you know, labor market, the not fair conditions that are existing there because of, you know, all the awful pictures we have in mind?
I think,
I mean, isn't that actually a bigger call for more responsibility in all kinds of product chains?
yeah, well, we have to differentiate because the China 20 years ago is not the China today. And other countries have come up also, and we have everywhere rising salaries. We have everywhere the need for more qualified staff, and they have also the same problems we have, lacking staff in very key areas, for example. So the picture is changing, actually. It's not just low salaries. They are not as low anymore, even in China. So things have been changing, and that's facing a big problem for the Chinese economy and the Chinese leadership. And that's partly why they are putting subsidies in some areas to gain an advantage.
So let's see what she says more on that topic.
Europe is open to competition, but not for a race to the bottom. We must defend ourselves against unfair practices. But equally, it is vital to keep open lines of communication and dialogue with China, because there are also topics where we can and have to cooperate. De-risk, not decouple. This will be my approach with the Chinese leadership at the EU-China Summit later this year. Meine Damen und Herren Abgeordnete.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the European Union, we are proud of our cultural diversity. We are a Europe of the regions. We have a unique blend of languages, music, art, traditions, crafts, cuisines. And we are also a Europe which is a continent of unique biological diversity. about 6,500 species which are only found in Europe, nowhere else in the world. In northern Europe, we have the World Natural Heritage Site, the Wadden Sea, which is a unique habitat offering a home to rare species of flora and fauna. And it's a vital resource for millions of migratory birds. And with the Baltic, we have the largest area of brackish water in the world. And south of that, we have the European plain. We have vast tracts of moorland and wetland that characterises that plain. These regions are important allies against climate change. Protected moors and wetlands absorb huge volumes of greenhouse gases. They secure regional water cycles, and they are home to a unique biodiversity as well. We have a Europe that is a continent of forests, with the mighty coniferous forests of the north and east, the last remnants of virgin oak and beech forests in Central Europe, to the cork oak forests of Southern Europe. All of these forests are irreplaceable as a source of goods and services. They absorb carbon dioxide, they supply wood and indeed other products. They generate fertile soils, they filter the air, the water. Biodiversity and ecosystem services are absolutely essential for all of us in Europe. The loss of nature doesn't only destroy the foundations of our life, but also the feeling of what people consider home. That is something we must protect.
Und gleichzeitig
And at the same time, we have to make sure that food security is in harmony with nature. That remains an essential task. And today I would like to express my appreciation to our farmers.
meine Anerkennung und
My appreciation and my gratitude that day by day they are always providing food for us, and producing healthy food, of course, is the fundamental task of our agricultural policy, the task of agriculture. And self-sufficiency in food is also important for us. That is something that our farmers are providing.
Just like to say something about the comment here. What about other people's homes? The South American rainforest, for example. I mean, there are lots of burning and catastrophic developments all around the world, as we know, in Europe and around. And of course, I think she will talk about the global responsibility on climate change and, of course, resources and social fairness and so on. I think this will come up. So just to don't leave this comment uncommented.
Yes, and it is important for people who are now a little bit bored because they didn't have coffee. This is now the short segment in every speech, which is a feel-good segment. You describe something which is very nice, and then you make comment someone. Don't worry, the hard political facts will come up in a moment.
Yes, and the protection of biodiversity, of course, is a major issue.
It's not an easy task, because the consequences of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, climate change bringing droughts, forest fires and flooding, but also new obligations, are all having a growing impact on farmers' work and farmers' incomes, and we must bear this in mind. Many are already working hard towards a more sustainable form of agriculture. We need to work together with the farmers and people working in agriculture to tackle these new challenges, and that's the only way we can secure a supply of food for the future for all of us. So we need more dialogue, we need less polarization. And hence, we would like to launch a strategic dialogue on the future of agriculture in the EU. I am and remain convinced that agriculture and protection of our natural world can go hand in hand. We need both.
Agriculture being such a crucial field, not only for survival, but also for climate change, for the future of biodiversity, for, I don't know, safety of healthy food, and the money flows that are concerned around that. They have been very criticized in the last years, to be honest, and to make changes in that field is also heavily opposed, I think. What's your
I think she
assessment on
is,
that?
of course, standing on shoulders here, because agricultural policy is one of the main topics of the European community before that, and now the European Union. It has been one of the major investments after the Second World War to gain food security after the experiences of wartime deprivations. And therefore, it is also the most critical part of European policy, because there are many things where people say the kind of subsidies which have been and are still paid are detrimental to many of the goals she has just outlined. So this is a touchy issue for European politics. We have had our decades of experience in agricultural policy, sometimes not very positive ones, putting a lot of money and creating lakes of milk and mountains of meat. And now we try to do a policy connecting food security and ecological issues, and then we have to see what kind of instruments can we use to do that. Will this be more subsidies, more putting more money like we did in the past, or will it be done in a maybe a little bit more intelligent way? Maybe she will add something to that. I'm curious to find out.
It's a very complex topic, so let's see what's happening here.
Honourable members, a fair transition for farmers, families and industry. This is the hallmark of this mandate. And it is all the more important as we face strong economic headwinds. I see three major economic challenges for our industry in the year ahead: labour and skill challenges, inflation, and making business easier for our companies. The first has to do with our labour market. We have not forgotten the early days of the global pandemic, when everyone predicted a new wave of 1930-style mass unemployment. But we defied this prediction. With SURE, the first ever European short-time work initiative, we saved 40 million jobs. This is and was Europe's social market economy in action, and I think we can be proud of it. We then immediately restarted our economic engine thanks to Next Generation EU. And today we see the results. Europe is close to full employment. Instead of millions of people looking for jobs, millions of jobs are looking for people. Labour and skill shortages are reaching record levels, both here and across all major economies. 74% of SMEs are saying they are facing skill shortages. In the peak of the tourist season, restaurants and bars in Europe are reducing their hours because they cannot find the staff they need. Hospitals are postponing treatments because lack of nurses and doctors. And 2/3 of European companies are looking for IT specialists, 2/3. At the same time, millions of parents, mostly mothers, are struggling to reconcile work and family because there is no appropriate childcare. And 8 million young people are neither in employment, nor in education, nor in training. 8 million. Their dreams put on hold, their lives on standby. This is not only the cause of so much personal distress, it is also one of the most significant bottlenecks of our competitiveness. Because labour shortages hamper the capacity for innovation, growth, and prosperity. So we need to improve access to the labour market, most importantly for young people, for women, and we need qualified migration. In addition, we need to respond to the deep-rooted shifts in technology, society, and demography. And for that, we should rely on the expertise of business and trade unions, our collective bargaining partners. It is almost 40 years ago since Jacques Delors convened the Val-Duchesse meeting that saw the birth of European social dialogue. Since then, social partners have shaped the union of today, ensuring progress and prosperity for millions. And as the world around changes faster than ever, social partners must again be at the heart of the future. Together, we must focus on the challenges facing the labor market, from skills and labor shortages to new challenges like AI. This is why, together with the Belgian presidency, next year, we will convene a new social partner summit once again at Val-Duchesse. The future of Europe will be built with and by the social partners. This is our task.
Dirk, let me ask you some really critical and complex questions about, if we take a look about demographic changes, one can get the impression that people get older, people who are once have been skilled might not have the education for the complex skills that are needed nowadays, and people who come to Europe might not be skilled at all or in the right fields. How would you tackle that problem? Because even if we could manage to make our migration policy combined with the skills management, there also would be the global problem, to come back to one comment, that we then draw all those talents from other countries that are also needed. I mean, how can we quickly fix the big educational problem?
No, well, we cannot fix it like that quickly, but one thing is very clear, that in many of our countries, we do not have an education and training system which is geared towards migration. We have an education and training system which is geared to our own population, for people who have grown up here. And those who coming from the outside are put in it, and we try to adjust a little bit here and there, but the resources are meager and we cannot do really. So we don't have a migratory approach to education and training. And I think we have to change that. Universities are a little bit better in that than all the other areas. If we take this serious with the qualified migration, she just said it once, maybe she will come up with the topic again, because it's a very difficult topic. Then we have to change a lot of the systems we have here in order to be able to absorb, because we will not get tailor-made, qualified, trained staff just starting the job in the next day. There is an adjustment period. There needs to be an upgrade in skills. But on the other hand, and you said complexity of the workplace, it is not always about complexity. We have in the tourism sector a lot of jobs where you can learn that in 2 or 3 years. This is good, and you don't have to be like a genius to do that. Yeah, there is complexity in itself, but basic things are still the same, and they are actually the same in many areas in the hospitality sector, of course, all over the world. So we have a point where we can reach people in the sector, but in order for them to stay, we have to have a welcoming culture, and we have to be able to pay them in a way that they see that this is really a benefit for them. Otherwise, they will run away, like everyone else will run away from these kind of jobs.
So it's not all about the health sector, doctors, nurses, and
It is not.
IT.
It is not. It's
there
everywhere.
can be jobs easier being learned, but still
Sure.
the circumstance has to be
And
attractive
we have to
somehow.
change our system. We are very in some of our countries, not all of them, we are very restrictive in qualifications. We have to be more flexible. We have to find modules and segments where people can partly qualify and then enter the labor market. In some of our member states, this is possible. In other member states, Germany, for example, this is a big challenge and it's very unflexible. We have to change that.
And I might add at that point that you're a migration counselor and an expert on that topic, also for the German government. And you have your own company with that. So you really, what you say has a lot of thought behind. So let's continue with Ursula von der Leyen.
The second major economic challenge, persistent high inflation. Christine Lagarde and the European Central Bank are working hard to keep inflation under control. We know that returning to the ECB's medium-term target will take some time. The good news is that Europe has started bringing energy prices down. We have not forgotten Putin's deliberate use of gas as a weapon and how it triggered fears of blackout and an energy crisis like in the 70s. Many thought we would not make it through the winter because of lack of energy, but we made it. We made it because we stayed united, pooling our demand and buying energy together. And at the same time, and different to the 70s, we used this crisis to massively invest in renewable energy and fast-track the clean transition. We used Europe's critical mass to bring prices down and secure our supply. Just take this, the price for gas in Europe was over 300 euros per megawatt hour 1 year ago. It is now around 35. 300 today, 35. So we need to look at how we can replicate this model of power, purchasing power at the market, a model of success also in other fields like critical raw materials and, for example,
Excuse me, Dirk, now I have to ask a really, I hesitate to say stupid question, but if prices are low, why are we as private people are still paying so much for all those things, energy and gas
well, it is, there's a price which we are currently buying things, and then there's a spot price on the markets. And that is also consisting of other influences, including people wanting to make a good deal of profit. And before these lower prices arrive at the spot prices, where we buy energy for a foreseeable future, we don't buy energy now, we buy it for the next 3 or 4 or 6 months. This will take some time. I hope it will come down. I'm paying much too much for energy as well. And the major problem here is as well that the market as it is now runs in a way that when you are producing energy cheaper, like electricity, but on the other hand, you have a way of, like with the gas, that is still very expensive. The overall price is oriented towards the more expensive part. So the cheaper part is under it. It doesn't really reduce the overall price. And maybe there needs to be a change in how we calculate the electricity price. There's a lot of discussion about that, which has become very evident now as gas has been so expensive.
Shouldn't be there the basic principle of competition that you mentioned before, that things get lower in price. Okay, let's see what she has to say.
Example, clean hydrogen. The third challenge of European companies is about making it easier to do business. Small companies do not have the capacity to cope with complex administration, or they are held back by lengthy processes. This often means they do less with the time they have, and that they miss out on opportunities to grow. This is why, before the end of the year, we will appoint an EU SME envoy reporting directly to me.
At this point, Dirk, I would like to ask you about the reactions within the European Parliament. I don't want to leave that uncommented, because we can see that the claps are a bit, slow, and people are typing in their phones and are kind of looking, business as usual. So where does this gap come from? Her enthusiasm and their reaction. There's some gap there.
I'm very sorry, Nana. If you look into the Austrian Parliament, or if you look into the Bundestag in Germany, or in any other big parliament, when someone is holding a speech, you will always find people who are less enthusiastic or clearly bored. And let us be quite clear, what President von der Leyen is saying here is not really a surprise. There is no revolutionary uproar here. It is what people in general are expecting, with some interesting points, of course, but it's not like she's surprising everyone with what she's saying, at least not so far. Maybe something is coming up. And every parliament is acting like that. You have people who are, okay, I heard that before, and what? Why should I keep attention that much? That's how it is. That is not an exception here. You will see it in every parliament. It's totally normal.
All right, and as we all know, this speech is actually addressing us, the European people, and it's just holding the space here in the European Parliament also. Yeah.
We want to hear directly from small and medium enterprises about their everyday challenges. For every new piece of legislation, we conduct a competitiveness check by an independent board. And next month, we will make the first legislative proposal towards reducing reporting obligations at the European level by 25%. Honourable members, let's be frank, this will not be easy, and we will need your support, because this is a common endeavour for all European institutions. So we also have to work with member states to match the 25% of reduction also at national level. I think it's time to make business easier in Europe. But European companies also need access to key technologies to innovate, develop and manufacture. And this is a question of European sovereignty, as the leaders underlined in Versailles. It is an economic and national security imperative to preserve a European edge on critical and emerging technologies. This European industrial policy also requires common European funding. And this is why, as part of our proposal for a review of our budget, we proposed the STEP platform. With STEP, we can boost, leverage and steer EU funds to invest in everything from microelectronics to quantum computing and AI, from biotech to clean tech. Our companies need this support now. So I urge for a quick agreement on our budget proposal, and I know I can count on this House. And there's more when it comes to competitiveness. We have seen real bottlenecks along global supply chains, including because of the deliberate policies of other countries. Just think about China's export restrictions on gallium and germanium, which are essential for goods like semiconductors and solar panels. This shows why it is so important for Europe to step up on economic security, de-risking, not decoupling. And I'm very proud that this concept has found broad support from key partners, from Australia to Japan and the United States. And many other countries around the world want to work together. Many are overly dependent on a single supplier for critical raw materials. Others, from Latin America to Africa, want to develop, rightly so, local value chains, local industries for processing and refining, instead of just shipping their resources abroad. This is why later this year we will convene the first meeting of our Critical Raw Materials Club. At the same time, we will continue to drive open and fair trade. So far, we have concluded new free trade agreements with Chile, with New Zealand, with Kenya. We should aim to complete deals with Australia, Mexico and Mercosur by the end of this year, and soon thereafter with India and Indonesia. I think smart trade delivers good jobs and prosperity. Honourable members, these three challenges, labour, inflation and business environment, come at a time when we are also asking industry to lead on the clean transition. So we need to look further ahead and set out how we remain competitive as we do that. And that is why I have asked Mario Draghi, one of Europe's great economic minds, to prepare a report on the future of European competitiveness, because Europe will do whatever it takes to keep its competitive edge. Now, when it comes to making business and life easier, we have seen how important digital technology is. It is telling that we have far overshot the 20% investment target in digital projects in Next Generation EU. Member states have used that investment to digitize the healthcare system, justice system, transport network, and at the same time, Europe has led on managing the risks of the digital world. The internet was born as an instrument for sharing knowledge, opening minds, and connecting people. It still is. But it has also given rise to serious challenges: disinformation, spread of harmful content, risk to the privacy of our data.
Let me just interfere here for a second. She just talked about the Next Generation EU program. This meant 800 billion for the modernization of economies in the EU. I would like to ask you a very critical question. At that point, it might be even, I don't know, so sad that it's almost funny. How much of that money did go to Viktor Orban's friends, in your opinion? Or let me ask, politically correct, how does the EU secure that that huge amount of money is being used correctly?
Well, we have, first of all, a very nice agency, the big European anti-corruption agency, OLAF, which is quite well equipped and quite hard on following the streams of money. And OLAF reports people are afraid of them all over the European Union, and rightly so. So we have quite a strong institution which is looking at it. Of course, when you have countries where their own control mechanisms are under the guidance of an authoritarian ruler and therefore are not independent anymore, you have a serious problem when these kind of controls mechanisms do not work anymore. And therefore, we need to strengthen the European ones, because it is also the only real viable pressure point we can put on regimes which are a little bit deviating from the European way. Because when it goes about money, then everyone is ready to listen and maybe can be talked into changing behavior. That is the one instrument the European Union has to not just discuss issues, but also to put some pressure behind it.
Education by money. Anyway, let's come back to Ursula von der Leyen. She was just taking the bridge from those Next Generation EU investments to the internet, and then to cybersecurity, I guess she will talk about, and the huge challenges on that field.
All of this led to a lack of trust and sometimes a breach of fundamental rights of people. In response, Europe has become the global pioneer of citizens' rights in the digital world. The DSA and DMA are creating a safer digital space where fundamental rights are protected. And they are ensuring fairness and clear responsibility for big tech. This is an historic achievement, and I think we should be proud of it. The same should be true for artificial intelligence. It will improve, without any question, healthcare, boost productivity, address climate change. We need it. But we also should not underestimate the real threats coming from AI, mostly Gen AI. Hundreds of leading AI developers, academics, and experts warned recently in the following words, and I quote, "Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority, alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war." End of quote. AI is a general technology that is accessible, powerful, and adaptable for a vast range of uses, both civilian and military. And it is moving faster than even its developers anticipated. So we have a narrowing window of opportunity to guide this technology responsibly. And I believe Europe, together with partners, should lead the way on a new global framework on AI built on 3 pillars: guardrails, governance, and guiding innovation. First, guardrails. Our number one priority is to ensure AI develops in a human-centric, transparent, and responsible way. And this is why in my political guidelines I committed to setting out a legislative approach in the first 100 days. You remember we put forward the AI Act, the world's first comprehensive pro-innovation AI law. And I want to thank this House and the Council for the tireless work on this groundbreaking law. Our AI Act is already a blueprint for the whole work. We must now focus on adopting the rules as soon as possible and turn to implementation. The second pillar is governance. We are now laying the foundation for a single governance system in Europe. But we should also join forces with our partners to ensure a global approach to understanding the impact of AI on our societies. Now, think about the invaluable contribution of the IPCC for climate. This is a global panel that provides the latest science to policymakers. I believe we need a similar body for AI.
I have a small problem with that, and this is also reflected in the chat right now. Not so much as because AI is a black box, just because, and she's mentioning the global framework she needs. The internet is a global phenomenon. We are all connected with everyone who has access to a computer everywhere. 100,000 of servers are running the internet all over the planet. And we have, and while she is saying that the IPCC is a good example, we also see that in how far, for example, decisions made on climate change are not implemented, either by countries who cannot do it or either things who are not, it's not so important or have higher priorities. I don't want to comment on that. And the same thing will happen with artificial intelligence. If we can run this kind of software very conveniently without a very big investment anywhere in the world, and it can be accessed from anywhere in the world, then I fear that it needs a little bit more than just a European regime, because we cannot seclude and exclude us from the worldwide internet. And I fear that what we are doing, especially as the development is so fast, as she has admitted herself right now, what we will do will always be too late. And I fear that the understanding of bureaucracies on what potential lies behind it and how far and fast it can go is still a little bit limited. So I'm not too confident that her approach will be successful, to be honest.
Let me ask a very science fiction-like question. What if AI becomes too strong? What is there still a possibility to shut off the internet and cut off all the, I don't know, AI
there are some people
possibilities?
There are
What
some people
happens
who have
then?
there are some people who have the keys to the internet, and they can theoretically shut off the internet. Yes. I would say we can have this discussion. Let's invite someone with an IT background who is very much a technical expert, because we are leaving my area of expertise here quite predominantly. And if we enter the area of the science fiction writer, I can imagine everything.
Thank you. Let's get back to Ursula
Yes.
von der Leyen.
And on its benefits for humanity. Yes, with scientists, but also tech companies and independent experts all around the world. This will allow us to develop a fast and globally coordinated response, building on the work done by the Hiroshima process and others. And the third pillar is guiding innovation in a responsible way. Thanks to our investment in the last years, Europe has now become a leader in supercomputing, with 3 out of the 5 most powerful supercomputers in the world. So we need to capitalize on that. And this is why I can announce today a new initiative to open up our high-performance computers to AI startups that gives them the opportunity to train their models, but in a responsible way. But this will only be one part of our work to guide innovation. What we need is an open dialogue with those that develop and deploy AI. This dialogue happens already in the United States. As you know, 7 major tech companies have already agreed to voluntary rules around safety, security, and trust. It happens here, where we will work on AI companies, with AI companies, so that they voluntarily commit to the principles of the AI Act before it enters into force, because we cannot lose time anymore. So now we should bring all of this work together towards minimum global standards for safe and ethical use of AI. Our people deserve it. Honourable members, when I stood here 4 years ago, I said that if we are united on the inside, nobody will divide us from the outside. And this was the thinking behind the Geopolitical Commission. Our Team Europe approach has enabled us to be more strategic, more assertive, and more united. And that is more important than ever. Our heart bleeds when we see the devastating loss of life in Libya and Morocco after the violent floods and earthquake. Europe will always stand ready to support in any way we can. Or think about the Sahel region, one of the poorest, yes, yet fastest growing demographically. The succession of military coups will make the region more unstable for years ahead. Russia is both influencing and benefiting from the crisis, and the region has become fertile ground to the rise of terrorism. This is of direct concern for Europe, for our security and our prosperity. So we need to show the same unity of purpose towards Africa as we have shown towards Ukraine. This is a must. We need to focus on cooperation with legitimate governments and regional organizations. We need to develop a mutually beneficial partnership which focuses on common issues for Europe and Africa. And this is why, together with HRVP Borrell, we will work on a new strategic approach to take forward at the next EU-AU summit. Honourable members, history is on the move. Russia is waging a full-scale war against the founding principles of the UN Charter. This has raised immense concerns in countries from Central Asia to the Indo-Pacific. They are worried that in a lawless world, they might face the same fate as Ukraine. We see a clear attempt by some to return to bloc thinking, trying to isolate and influence countries in between. And it comes at a time when there is a deeper unease by many emerging economies about the way institutions and globalization work for them. These concerns are legitimate. These emerging economies, with its people and natural assets, are essential allies in building a cleaner, safer, and more prosperous world. So Europe will always work with them to reform and improve the international system. We want to lead efforts to make the rules-based order fairer and make distribution more equal. This will also mean working with new and old partners to deepen our connections. And here, Europe's offer with Global Gateway is unique. Global Gateway is more transparent, more sustainable, and more economically attractive. Just last week, when I was in Delhi, we signed, I think, the most ambitious project of our generation, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. It will be the most direct connection to date between India, the Arabian Gulf, and Europe, with a rail link that will make trade between India and Europe 40% faster, with an electricity cable and a clean hydrogen pipeline to foster clean energy trade between Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, and with a high-speed data cable to link some of the most innovative digital ecosystems in the world, and create business opportunities all along the way. These are state-of-the-art connections for the world of tomorrow, faster, shorter, cleaner.
I'd like to ask you now here, Dick. The Global Gateway Program, 300 billion were invested in sustainable projects worldwide. She just gave a very good example of how that can be beneficial also for Europe, of course, because there's always a European aspect in that, of course, as well. How big do you think is the factual impact of those European investment policies on also the sustainable development of the rest of the world, of the places where there is the investment taking place?
Yeah, we like to have these numbers, but we have to also keep in mind that especially very poor countries, and she mentioned the Sahel zone, for example, in sub-Saharan Africa, cannot absorb from the structure a lot of money. So a lot of money is actually not solving the problem. We in Germany have sometimes the attitude that we see a problem, we throw money on it, and once we don't see the problem anymore because there's money covering it, the problem is solved. That's not how it works. And consequently, I would say investing is good, having the money is good, and doing it properly is good. But we have experience in development policy that sustainability continues to be an issue when the local structures are not capable to solve the problem.
Very interesting. Thank you.
We need more of them. And Global Gateway is making the real difference. I've seen it in Latin America, Southeast Asia, and across Africa, from building a local hydrogen economy with Namibia and Kenya, to the digital economy with the Philippines. These are investments in our partners' economies, and their investment in Europe's prosperity and security in a fast-changing world. Mesdames et Messieurs les députés.
Ladies and gentlemen, every day we see that conflict, climate change, and instability are pushing people to seek refuge elsewhere. I have always had a steadfast conviction that migration needs to be managed. It needs endurance and patient work together with our key partners. And above all, it requires unity within our union. And this is the spirit in which the new Pact on Migration and Asylum has been established. When I took office, there didn't seem to be any possible compromise that could be forged. But with this pact, we managed to strike a new balance between protecting borders and protecting people, between sovereignty and solidarity, between security and humanity. We listened to all the member states and we focused on all the migratory routes, and we translated the spirit of the pact into practical solutions. We were fast and resolute in responding to the hybrid attack that Belarus launched against us, and we worked closely with our partners in the Western Balkans and reduced irregular flows. We signed a partnership with Tunisia, which is bringing mutual benefits beyond migration: education, energy, skills and security. And we now want to work on similar agreements with other countries. We have bolstered border protection. European agencies have deepened their cooperation with member states. And allow me to thank in particular Bulgaria and Romania for having shown the way by showcasing best practices on both asylum and returns. They have proved that Bulgaria and Romania are part of our Schengen area. Let us finally bring them in without any more delay.
All right, there's a bridge taken here now from the migration topic to the enlargement topic. Before we go further on to the enlargement, perhaps you will go there in the content, I would like to ask you as a migration expert. I mean, why is there always the feeling that whatever is done, and there is being done a lot of things, it's not enough and it's somehow not the right thing. Why isn't there any solution to that big problem?
Well, we don't have this unity she was talking about. This is one of the topics, migration, where the differences between the member states are the biggest. There are some who would like to have it a little bit more progressive and human rights oriented, and some others who don't care and just don't want people to come, sometimes in a very strict way. And to bridge this gap is very difficult, and is, I think, beyond the capacity of the European Commission to bridge. It is something the member state national governments have to come to an agreement in between. And we have this idea now, this proposal which has been made this year about migration policy, about the reform of asylum policy, which will, I think, not be decided finally before the elections. I think the new parliament will talk about that, and there's also a danger that a more right-wing parliament will talk about it in a much different way than the current parliament would. So there's another issue. Migration is not a rational field of political discussion. It is something which is loaded with emotions and loaded with fears and loaded with a good degree of hate and disgust and discrimination. We cannot talk in a rational way about it, because from one side or the other, the emotions cook up immediately. And that goes the same for national. It goes the same for national governments. They act like they're citizens in a way. So I'm very afraid that, aside from what we've already done, the big solution to migration policy will not be done within the foreseeable future, because the differences between the national governments are so great.
Thank you so much. It's really highly emotional and so necessary to find better solutions, even better, no matter how much is done. And let's see what she's talking about, if she stays with that topic or goes to the Western Balkans. I think she's been.
Mesdames et messieurs, notre
Ladies and gentlemen, our work on migration is based on the conviction that unity is definitely within reach. An agreement on the pact has never been so close. Parliament and the Council now have a historic opportunity to get this over the line. Let us show that Europe can manage migration effectively and with compassion. Let us get this work done.
Honourable members, we know that migration requires constant work, and nowhere is that more vital than in the fight against human smugglers. They attract desperate people with their lies and put them on deadly routes across the desert or on boats that are unfit for the sea. The way these smugglers operate is continuously evolving, but our legislation is over 20 years old and needs an urgent update. So we need new legislation and a new governance structure. We need stronger law enforcement, prosecution, and a more prominent role for our agency Europol, Eurojust, and Frontex. And we need to work with our partners to tackle this global plague of human trafficking. And this is why the Commission will organize an international conference on fighting people smuggling. It is time to put an end to this callous and criminal business. Honourable members, on the day when Russian tanks crossed the border into Ukraine, a young Ukrainian mother set off for Prague to bring her child to safety. When the Czech border official stamped her passport, she started to cry. Her son didn't understand, and he asked his mother why she was crying. She answered, "Because we are at home." "But this is not Ukraine," he said. So she explained, "This is Europe." On that day, that Ukrainian mother felt that Europe was her home. Because home, as she said, is where we trust each other. And the people of Ukraine could trust their fellow Europeans. Her name was Victoria Amelina. She was one of the great young writers of her generation and a tireless activist for justice. Once her son was safe, Victoria returned to Ukraine to document Russia's war crimes. 1 year later, she was killed by a Russian ballistic missile while having dinner with other writer colleagues. She was the victim of a Russian war crime, one of the countless attacks against innocent civilians. Amelina was with 3 friends that day, including Hector Abad, a fellow writer from Colombia. He is part of a campaign called Aguanta Ucraina, Resist Ukraine, created to tell Latin Americans of Russia's war of aggression and attacks on civilians. But Hector could never imagine becoming the target himself. Afterwards, he said, he did not know why he lived and she died. But now he is telling the world about Victoria, to save her memory and to end this war. And I am honored that Hector is with us here today. I want to thank you, Hector. I want to thank you, and I want you to know that we will keep the memory of Victoria and all other victims alive. Aguanta, Ukraine.
Let's keep that for a moment in mind while we take a look at European measures that were taken in the war against the Ukraine, the Russians' aggressions. Almost 8 million of Ukrainian refugees got somehow humanitarian support. 76 billion were provided to support the Ukraine. For example, 100 million to rebuild schools. Almost 1/5 of Ukraine's children are safe within the EU now, and 11 sanction packages against Russia have been implemented. 1.2 billion is invested in the European Defence Fund for projects to increase security. Yet, I mean, this is immense what has been done. Yet there is still a war. Is everything we do necessary? Doesn't it help at all? Is it the wrong thing, or is there any other things that could be done to end that?
Well, I think it is necessary, and maybe it was a little bit too late most of the time, because the dynamic of the war was seen differently by different actors, and decision-making process in the European Union was very difficult. The German government was not always, for example, at the forefront of decision-making. They were like waiting a little bit here and there. I think that right now everyone understands that things need to be done and continue to need to be done. The reality of the war in Ukraine is a very complex tactical situation with entrenched fighters on both sides and a lot of very bloody battles. And even if you have a lot of very sophisticated modern weapons, there's some basic physics of battle you cannot overcome so easily. I think that's what we see right now. But again, we are still withering and dithering. We have waited very long until we finally came to the conclusion that maybe the Ukrainian Air Force needs modern planes. This could have been done much faster. So here, yes, we did a lot, and that is very good, and I commend it, but we were a little bit too slow, and I think we still are sometimes.
Thank you. So let's see what is going to happen in the future. I guess you will say something about that. Civil engagement. It's all about us, every one of us, to engage ourselves in the values of freedom, of human rights, solidarity, democracy, rule of law, equality.
Honourable members, we will be at Ukraine's side every step of the way, for as long as it takes. Since the start of the war, 4 million Ukrainians have found refuge in our union. And I want to say to them that they are as welcome now as they were in those fateful first weeks. We have ensured that they have access to housing, healthcare, the job market, and much more. And honourable members, this was Europe answering the call of history. And so I am proud to announce that the Commission will propose to extend our temporary protection to Ukrainians in the European Union. Our support to Ukraine will endure. We have provided 12 billion this year alone to help pay wages and pensions, to help keep hospitals, schools and other services running. And through our ASAP proposal, we are ramping up ammunition production to help match Ukraine's immediate needs. But we are also looking further ahead. And this is why we have proposed an additional 50 billion euros for over 4 years for investment and reforms. This will help build Ukraine's future to rebuild a modern and prosperous country. And that future is clear to see. This House has said it out loud. The future of Ukraine is in our union. The future of the Western Balkans is in our union. The future of Moldova is in our union. And I know how important the EU perspective is for so many people in Georgia. Honourable members, I started by speaking of Europe's responding to the call of history. And history is now calling us to work on completing our union. In a world where some are trying to pick off countries one by one, we cannot afford to leave our fellow Europeans behind. In a world where size and weight matters, it is clearly in Europe's strategic interest to complete our union. But beyond the politics and geopolitics of it, we need to picture what is at stake. We need to set out a vision for a successful enlargement. A union complete with over 500 million people living in a free, democratic, and prosperous union. A union complete with young people who can live, study, and work in freedom. A union complete with vibrant democracies in which judiciaries are independent, oppositions are respected, and journalists are respected. Because the rule of law and fundamental rights are always and will always be the foundation of our union in current and in future member states. And this is why the Commission has made the rule of law reports a key priority. We now work closely with member states to identify progress and concerns and make recommendations for the year ahead. This has ensured accountability in front of this House and national parliaments. It has allowed for dialogue between member states, and it is delivering results. I believe that we can do the same for future member states. And this is why I'm very happy to announce that we will open the rule of law reports to those accession countries who get up to speed even faster. This will place them on an equal footing with member states and support them in their reform efforts. And it will help ensure that our future is a union of freedom, rights, and values for all. Honourable Member State, honourable members. Then the next sentence is, this is on our shared interest. Parliament, Member States and Commission. This is in our shared interest. Just think about the great enlargement of 20 years ago. We called it the European Day of Welcomes.
All right, just make it stop because I see the comment and get the joke. The joke is actually obvious for all those who have present how the EU works in basic. It's a cooperation between the three institutions of the Commission, of the Council, and of the or of the member states, so to say, of the Commission and of the European Parliament. The European Parliament is, talking for the people, while the member states, they are often talking, to be re-voted. Let's say like that. So she was just addressing the wrong audience in some way, because she's used to bridge and to balance all those three different views of perspectives of how to make policies and what is important. That's my assessment of the joke. So
I think so. She wanted to say dear members, which are the members of parliament,
yes,
and she bungled it in member states, which are also addressed somehow, but she's in the wrong house for that.
Yeah, but that's one of the crucial jobs of the Commission, is to balance, the member states and all the ministers and all the state of heads, and then on the other hand, the parliamentarians, and with that, the citizens. So.
And it was a triumph of determination and hope over the burdens of the past. And in the 20 years since, we have seen an economic success story which has improved the lives of millions. I want us to look forward to the next European Day of Welcomes and the next economic success stories. I know this is not an easy road. Accession is merits-based, and the Commission will always defend this principle. It takes hard work and leadership, but there is already a lot of progress. We have seen the great strides Ukraine has already made since we granted them candidate status. And we've seen the determination of other candidate countries to reform. So, honourable members, it is now time for us to match this determination. And that means thinking about how we get ready for a completed union. We need to move past old binary debates about enlargement. This is not a question of deepening integration or widening the union. We can and we must do both, to give us the geopolitical weight and the capacity to act. And this is what our union has always done. Each wave of enlargement came with a political deepening. We went from coal and steel towards full economic integration. And after the fall of the Iron Curtain, we turned an economic project into a true union of people and states. I believe that the next enlargement must also be a catalyst for progress. We have started to build a health union at 27, and I believe we can finish it at 30 plus. We have started to build a European Defence Union by 27. I'm convinced we can finish it at 30 plus. We have proven that we can be a geopolitical union and showed that we can move fast when we are united. And I believe that Team Europe also works at 30 plus. Honourable member, I know this House believes the same. And the European Parliament has always been one of the main drivers of European integration. It has been so throughout the decades, and it is once again today. And I will always support this House and all of those who want to reform the European Union to make it work better for citizens. And yes, that means including through a European Convention and treaty change if and where it is needed.
a topic, as you know, I'm very fond of, especially the convention, because we need clear rules for everyone, and they must be legally binding, and the political decision-making and also the consequences. If someone is not, going according to the line, they have to be so clear, and they have to be agreed on and executable.
Yes, and I'm happy that first when she started about completion, I was afraid that she would only talk about enlargement, which is an important topic. I'm not against it, but forget the vertical part of it, the deepening of the integration. And I'm very happy that she turned it around and said that both is connected and it is a catalyst of that. So it is of course a very political speech in a way that she's appealing to everyone to this not undisputed vision, because there are many who say we need neither enlargement nor deeper integration, and I'm happy. But this is also in a way she can say, okay, if you ask me to become a commission president for another period, that is the program I will follow. This is what I'm standing for. She has now made it very clear that anyone who is against enlargement, against deeper integration, should not vote for her in the national government level to become the EU Commission president for the future as well.
So she's positioning herself.
I think she's positioning herself quite clearly here. Yes, I think so.
Okay, let's see.
But we cannot and we should not wait for treaty change to move ahead with enlargement. A union fit for enlargement can be achieved faster. That means answering practical questions about how a union of over 30 countries will work in practice, and in particular about our capacity to act. The good news is that with every enlargement, those who said it would make us less efficient were proven wrong. Take the last few years. We agreed on next generation EU at 27. We agreed to buy vaccines by 27.
There's one question in the chat I would like to address, and that is why not deepening integration first and enlargement later? There are indeed people who say that might be interesting and might be a good thing, but there are some political pressures, and we have seen, for example, in the Balkan states, that for a certain period of time, populations are much in favor of entering the European Union, but the longer they wait, the more they get frustrated and angry that there's no progress. And we have already seen this in discussion about Ukraine as well, that we have to be careful and wait and so on. So if you do that, if you do the deepening of the integration first, and then wait another 10, 15 years for enlargement, it might be that those potential member states to join the European Union will have oriented themselves somewhere else. And maybe they have found good friends in the Russian Federation or China. We want to avoid that. We want to be their good friends. And therefore, we cannot distinct these steps from each other. And I think the Commission President has said it quite clearly, and I totally agree. It has to be done in a parallel way.
On sanctions in record times, also at 27. We agreed to purchase natural gas not only at 27, but already including Ukraine, Moldova, and Serbia. So it can be done. But we need to look closer at each policy and see how they could be affected by a larger union. And this is why the Commission will start working on a series of pre-enlargement policy reviews to see how each area might need to be adapted to a larger union. We will need to think about how our institutions would work, how the Parliament and the Commission would work. We need to discuss the future of our budget in terms of what it finances, how it finances it, and how it is financed. And we need to understand how to ensure credible security commitments in a world where deterrence matters more than ever. These are questions we must address today if we want to be ready for tomorrow. And the Commission will play its part. And this is why we will put forward our ideas to the leaders' discussion under the Belgian presidency. We will be driven by the belief that completing our union is the best investment in peace, security, and prosperity for our continent. So, it is time for Europe to once again think big and write our own destiny. Honourable members, Victoria Amelina believed that it is our collective duty to write a new story of Europe. This is where Europe stands today, at a time and place where history is written. The future of our continent depends on the choices we make today, on the steps we take to complete our union. The people of Europe want a union that stands up for them in a time of great power competition, but also one that protects and stands close to them as a partner and ally in their daily battles. And we will listen to their voice. If it matters to Europeans, it matters to Europe. Think again about the vision and the imagination of the young generation I started my speech with. It is the moment to show them that we can build a continent where you can be who you are, love who you want, aim as high as you want, a continent reconciled with nature and leading the way on new technologies, a continent that is united in freedom and peace. Once again, this is Europe's moment to answer the call of history. Long live Europe. Thank you.
So I think we just have heard the final word. Long live Europe. Dirk, how do you feel now? How would you sum up this? What was most important for you, and what do you think about Long live Europe?
Well, it is a State of the Union speech, and these kind of speeches always concentrate on visions and achievements, and they do not very much go into details of things which didn't work out or where people did not cooperate. And of course, that is not to be expected. And that's why we are commenting this speech, because there are always things behind in migration policy in other areas where things are not that perfectly worked out yet, and big solutions are not on the horizon, actually, despite the hopes the president has here voiced right now. I think it was a good speech. It could have been presented with a little bit more energy, maybe, but she is who she is. We cannot expect that from every person. Everyone speaks and presents depending on his or her personality. I think she came out as being quite convinced about what she's saying. So I take it for granted that she's serious about the things she's saying, also serious about the things she's not saying, the problems she's not addressing at this point of time. I think it is also a very good speech, which kind of puts the groundwork for her eventually looking for a second term. She has not declared herself. There are voices which have already supported this idea. I think there's a possibility that she might be available again. Depends on certain political circumstances. It depends also a little bit on the election results of the European Parliament, because the European Parliament has to accept the new commission in its majority. But I think this vision, this going forward, this going deeper and wider is something which she wants to do and wants to accompany and wants to be part of. So therefore, it has been, in a way, an application letter.
That's nicely formulated. What's your final message actually at that point in history, less than a year to the next European elections? What would you like to tell the viewers and listeners right now, and in the view of the challenges as well as the upcoming future options and choices to be taken in Europe?
Well, the first option I would ask everyone who's listening to this stream is, it has been mentioned there are elections next year. Don't just go to election. That's you should do. That's very important. But also, please take your time and scrutinize the programs, European programs of the parties which are running, which are on the list. Read it carefully. Ask them questions you find very important about the European future, about the developments you would like to see. put a little bit of effort and then make an informed decision who you will vote for. And if you are in favor of either deepening or enlarging European Union, if you're in favor of the European idea, I don't care which party you vote for, as long as it is one which is putting these things at heart also in its programmatic approach. That's what I want you to do. Take it seriously. Don't just go for vote, but inform yourself, prepare yourself for this decision, because we are indeed at a historically important point. I agree totally with the speech we just heard, and we can all be part of it with our decision making.
Thank you so much. These are perfect words for my final words. I would like to quote Lithuanian political science professor Dalia Bankovskaitė. She says, democracy is like the air. You breathe and you do not care. And like air pollution, it's really time to care for our democracy, and with that, for our healthy society, for our healthy well-being, and the future of all of us. Every crisis has the potential to pollute democratic principles. I mentioned it already. We still have lots of the crises. They will be keeping coming up and surprising us, and every crisis leads to stress, and stress means a rise in fear and anger and ignorance, and most of all into instant fight, flight, freeze reactions, and with that, and this is most important, to the autocratic temptation to the longing for strong leaders and quick fixes. In that sense, it's really crucial to know that the future of Europe does not lie in the hands of the Commission or the Parliament or the leaders of EU member states and their governments. It's all in our hands if we are committed to goals such as justice, humanity, peace, freedom, and the European quality of life. There are many ways to shape the European fate as a citizens, starting with going to vote at the European elections. Make an informed vote. Like you said, Dirk, it's coming up in June next year, so 2024. Have a lovely day, everyone. Goodbye from the two of us. And I will, anyway, start the stream to see if we didn't miss anything. So let's check that out.
Clapping a lot. Yes, she's leaving.
She's leaving.
Good timing.
All right. All the best to you.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.